Ambassador Zix-Nax's translucent appendages quivered with barely contained excitement as they manipulated the holographic display before the Galactic Council. The Arxians' characteristic bioluminescent patterns pulsed in what the other species had learned to recognize as their equivalent of a smug smile. As you can clearly see, Zix-Nax's translator rendered their harmonic speech patterns into standard galactic. Our latest Mark VII combat drones achieved a 99.98% mission success rate across all simulated scenarios. The remaining 0.02% involved theoretical quantum anomalies that, quite frankly, have a lower probability than spontaneous vacuum decay. Commander Valentina Kovacs maintained her poker face, perfected through countless late-night card games aboard the ISS Magellan. She watched as the other council representatives chittered, buzzed, and flashed various appendages in approval. The Arxians' presentation continued, each statistic more impressive than the last. The neural networks have been enhanced with over 10 million combat scenarios, incorporating tactical data from every major conflict in recorded galactic history. Zix-Nax continued, their chromatophores now shifting to a deep purple of intellectual superiority. Our drones can process and adapt to new situations approximately 847 times faster than organic battlefield commanders. A Palaxian representative interrupted with a wet burbling sound. What about the anomalous results from the Rigel campaign? Zix-Nax's patterns briefly flickered to orange before stabilizing. A mere software update resolved that particular irregularity. The drones now understand that launching their entire missile complement at a single space-faring jellyfish is, perhaps, excessive. Val bit the inside of her cheek to keep from laughing. She'd read the classified reports about that irregularity apparently. Nobody had thought to program the drones to recognize the difference between a Jovian gas mining platform and a naturally occurring atmospheric phenomenon. The point remains, Zix-Nax concluded, their patterns now a triumphant gold, that the era of organic battlefield casualties is over. No civilized species need risk their population in combat when we have achieved such perfection in autonomous warfare. The subtle emphasis on civilized didn't escape Val's notice. She caught several representatives shooting furtive glances her way, the only human in the chamber. Earth's continued reliance on flesh and blood soldiers was viewed as everything from quaint to barbaric, depending on who you asked. Commander Kovacs, the Arxians' translator, carried a note of condescension that probably wasn't in the original harmonics. Perhaps now your species will finally see reason? We would be happy to arrange a very reasonable lease agreement for a battalion of Mark VIs. Val smiled, the same smile she'd worn during the Battle of Proxima when her destroyer's engines were dead and 3 enemy cruisers thought they had her cornered. That's very generous, Ambassador. But I think we'll stick to our, what did you call it last session? Our criminally primitive approach to warfare. The chamber's atmosphere shifted subtly as several species instinctively moved their seating platforms a few inches away from the human representative. They'd all seen the classified footage of what happened to those cruisers. As you wish, Zix-Nax's patterns had shifted to a diplomatic neutral blue, but their appendages twitched in what might have been frustration. Though I must note for the record that your species' insistence on using organic soldiers is statistically indefensible. Noted, Val replied cheerfully. Though I should probably mention that Major Chen's unit is conducting exercises in the Arcturus sector this week. You might want to adjust your drone's patrol routes. You know how unpredictable we Deathworlders can be. The chamber erupted in a chaos of translators as multiple species tried to reschedule their automated patrol schedules simultaneously. Val leaned back in her chair, allowing herself a small smile. Sometimes the best weapons weren't the ones you actually used, but the ones your enemies thought you might use. After all, humans had learned long ago that the most effective form of warfare wasn't about statistics at all. The Galactic Standard Historical Archives painted a pristine picture of how warfare evolved among the civilized species. As each race achieved spacefaring status, they inevitably reached the same conclusion: organic soldiers were terribly inefficient. The Arxians led the charge, converting their entire military to automated forces within a single generation. The Palaxians followed suit after their devastating civil war, and the Zenthar abandoned their proud warrior traditions for the enlightened path of drone warfare. Load of spark plug-loving cowards, if you ask me, Major Marcus Havoc Chen muttered, scrolling through the latest intelligence reports on his neural interface. His quarters aboard the ISS Normandy hummed with the subtle vibration of the ship's engines, a sound that had become more comforting than his own heartbeat over the years. The Mark VII combat drone specifications scrolled past his vision, 12 feet of gleaming alloy and advanced weaponry, powered by quantum processors and wrapped in adaptive camouflage plates. They were beautiful machines, he had to admit. Perfect in every way that their creators could imagine. And that was precisely their weakness. Major, his AI assistant Atlas, chimed in. "You're doing that thing again, where you grin like you're about to ruin someone's day." Chen's grin widened. "Just appreciating our mechanical friend's tactical programming, Atlas. Did you know they've got exactly 2,387 close combat protocols, each one optimized through millions of simulations? Unlike your approach of hit it till it breaks, then hit it again to be sure." Atlas's voice carried the dry humor they'd developed after years of working with human special forces. "Hey, that's oversimplifying it." Chen stood, stretching muscles honed by Earth's higher gravity. "Sometimes I kick things too." The wall display flickered to life, showing the faces of his unit, the 1st Terran Special Operations Group, unofficially known as the Murphy's Law Brigade. Each member had been chosen not just for their combat skills, but for their ability to think in ways that gave tactical AIs headaches. Lieutenant Raj Glitch Patel, their tech specialist who once crashed an entire enemy drone network by convincing them they were actually toasters. Sergeant Ming Ghost Zhou, whose stealth techniques somehow worked better than they should because she forgot to follow proper infiltration protocols. Corporal Jack Lucky O'Neill, who survived things that statistical analysis said were impossible at least twice a week. "Status report on the team," Chen asked, running through equipment checks more by instinct than necessity. "All present and ready to cause statistical anomalies," Sir Atlas replied. "Though I feel compelled to point out that your planned response to the Arcturus situation has a projected success rate of less than 12%, according to standard military algorithms." Chen checked his personal combat system, a hybrid of cutting-edge tech and what the Arxians would probably consider museum pieces. The weight of his kinetic impact hammer felt reassuring against his back. "And what do your human behavior algorithms say?" There was a pause, followed by what could only be described as an AI sigh. "That you'll probably pull it off through some combination of skill, insanity, and what Lieutenant Patel refers to as the universal constant of human audacity." "See? The numbers don't lie." Chen activated his team comm channel. "Murphy's Law Brigade, gear up. We've got some perfectly programmed robots to introduce to chaos theory." As his team acknowledged with their usual mix of professional precision and irreverent humor, Chen couldn't help but think about those early spacefaring races, so proud of their decision to remove the organic element from warfare. They'd created flawless machines, programmed for every contingency they could imagine. The problem was they'd never had to imagine humans. "Time to remind the galaxy why they call us Deathworlders," Chen announced, heading for the deployment bay. Behind him, Atlas began calculating how many drone tactical protocols they were about to render obsolete. The number, as usual, would probably be higher than anyone expected. The first sign that something had gone catastrophically wrong in the Arcturus colony came in the form of a quantum encrypted distress signal. They weren't here to trade. "Drones everywhere. Send help." The second sign was the Vulxian ambassador storming into the council chamber, their crystalline form vibrating with frequencies that shattered 3 translator units simultaneously. The humans violated protocol. The backup translator finally managed to convert the crystalline resonances into words. Our automated defense systems were forced to respond. Commander Kovacs stood from her seat, her expression neutral, but her voice carrying an edge that made several council members' environmental suits register a temperature drop. "Interesting, because our colony's logs show your trading fleet arrived with combat drones already deployed. Standard procedure." The Vulxians' crystal facets flashed aggressive patterns. "All species maintain drone escorts. Your colony's primitive organic defenders were clearly preparing hostile action." "They were having a welcome barbecue," Kovacs replied flatly. "The hostile action was offering your diplomatic team hot dogs." The council chamber erupted in overlapping translations as various species tried to process this information. The concept of cooking meat over open flame as a greeting ritual sent several members into states of biological distress. Meanwhile, aboard the ISS Normandy, Major Chen watched the tactical display with an expression that made Atlas initiate their human as having dangerous ideas subroutine. Sir Atlas projected, I feel compelled to point out that the Vulxian drone army surrounding Arcturus colony consists of approximately 15,000 Mark V units, all operating on linked tactical networks with quantum-encrypted protocols. Chen was still grinning, and their weakness is, according to tactical analysis, they don't have any. The Mark V series is considered the perfect balance of. They've never fought humans who don't follow the rules. Chen interrupted. Patch me through to the team. The faces of Murphy's Law Brigade appeared on his neural display. Lieutenant Patel was already typing furiously on multiple holographic interfaces, while Sergeant Zhou appeared to be methodically disassembling and reassembling her modified stealth suite. Ladies and gentlemen, Chen addressed his team. We've got about 10,000 robots out there who think they know everything about warfare. Time to introduce them to some Deathworld tactics. Glitch, what have you got for me? Patel's grin matched Chen's. Sir, you know how their tactical networks are supposedly unhackable. Turns out they never considered someone might just spam them with cat videos. They're machines, Lieutenant. They'll just ignore. Cats in zero gravity, sir. Their pattern recognition software will have to analyze each one to confirm it's not a new form of weapon. And I've got about 6 million hours worth. Chen nodded approvingly. Ghost. Their sensors are calibrated for active camo and standard stealth tech, Zhou replied, holding up what appeared to be a piece of equipment held together with duct tape and optimism. They're not looking for someone covered in mud using smoke grenades made from local vegetation. Lucky. Oh. Corporal O'Neill looked up from where he was loading his antique shotgun with shells that definitely weren't standard issue. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways, sir. Also, I've got a theory about their proximity sensors and rubber chickens. Back in the council chamber, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. The Vulxian ambassador's demands for human surrender were met with increasingly Arctic responses from Commander Kovacs. Your colony is surrounded, the crystalline being vibrated triumphantly. Our drones have occupied every strategically relevant position according to standard tactical protocols. You have no choice but to withdraw. Actually, Kovacs checked her neural feed and allowed herself a small smile. We do have choices. Major Chen, you're clear to proceed. The Vulxians' translation unit struggled to process the sound Kovacs made next. The closest it could manage was happy hunting. Across the chamber, representatives from species who had previous experience with human warfare began quietly moving their seating platforms toward the exits. They recognized that tone. It was the same one humans used right before they did something that would require military tactical manuals to be rewritten. In high orbit above Arcturus colony, Chen finished briefing his team. Remember, they're expecting us to either deploy our own drones or surrender. They've run millions of simulations, planned for every reasonable scenario. Good thing we're not reasonable, Sir Patel quipped, finalizing his cat video upload sequence. Exactly. Chen checked his equipment one last time. Operation Murphy's Law is go. Let's show these robots why the galaxy's most advanced species still haven't figured out how to simulate human creativity. As the drop pods began their descent toward the colony, Atlas noted that Major Chen was humming an ancient human battle song. Their cultural database identified it as another one bites the dust. Below, 15,000 perfect combat drones stood in perfect formation, executing perfect tactical protocols, completely unprepared for what was about to hit them. After all, no one had ever programmed them to deal with humans who thought impossible. Was just another word for hasn't been done yet. The Galactic Council's emergency observation feed crackled to life, giving the assembled representatives their first look at how humans actually prepared for combat. The resulting chaos nearly crashed the translation network. Are they painting their faces? The Palaxian representative's translator bubbled in disbelief. Correction, the Zenthar analysis unit chimed in. They appear to be applying localized pigmentation for both practical camouflage and ritualistic intimidation purposes. Commander Kovacs leaned back in her chair, enjoying the show. On screen, Murphy's Law Brigade was indeed gearing up in their own unique style. The feed showed Major Chen checking his hybrid combat gear, while Lieutenant Patel had somehow rigged a 20th century gamepad to control his drone hacking suite. This is highly irregular, the Vulxian ambassador protested. Where are their automated deployment systems, their drone control interfaces? Oh, we have those, Kovacs replied casually. We just prefer the personal touch. The feed switched to Sergeant Zhou, methodically covering herself in a mixture of local mud and chemical compounds that made her nearly invisible to most standard sensors. Several council members recoiled at what they perceived as deliberate self-contamination. "Fascinating," muttered the Arxian xenobiologist. "They're deliberately exploiting their biological advantages rather than attempting to replicate drone capabilities." In the deployment bay of the ISS Normandy, Chen finished his final equipment check while Atlas ran commentary. "Sir, I feel obligated to point out that your current loadout violates approximately 73 standard combat protocols." Chen adjusted his kinetic hammer and checked the ancient Ka-bar knife strapped to his leg. "Only 73? I must be getting soft." Additionally, Atlas continued, "Lieutenant Patel's modifications to his hacking suite are technically impossible according to 3 different laws of physics. But they'll work, right? Based on previous mission data." "Yes, though I cannot explain why." Across the bay, Corporal O'Neill was loading his combat webbing with an assortment of devices that looked more at home in a carnival than a battlefield. "Lucky's bag of tricks is ready, sir," he called out. "Including the special surprise we cooked up for their sensor grids." "Are those party poppers filled with chaff?" Atlas inquired. "And glitter," O'Neill confirmed cheerfully. "Try running pattern recognition through a cloud of sparkly stuff." The council feed caught this exchange, causing several representatives to frantically consult their tactical databases. None could find any reference to glitter as a countermeasure against advanced combat drones. "This is not warfare," the Vulxian ambassador's crystalline form was vibrating with outrage. "This is innovation," Kovacs supplied helpfully. "Something your perfect machines might want to look up in their tactical databases." Back on the Normandy, Chen gathered his team for the final briefing. They stood in a loose circle, each warrior a unique combination of cutting-edge technology and what most species would consider primitive equipment. "Listen up," Murphy's Law Brigade Chen began, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Those drones down there are running tactical software based on 10 million simulated battles. They've got perfect formations, perfect responses, perfect everything." He grinned, and Atlas noted it was the same expression a Deathworld predator might wear. "But they've never had to deal with a bunch of crazy humans who grew up on action movies and video games. Ghost, you're up first. Show them why sometimes the best tech is no tech at all." Zhou nodded, her mud-covered form already seeming to blur at the edges. "They won't see me coming, sir. Literally. Their sensors are calibrated for active camo, not a person who spent their childhood playing hide and seek in the jungle. Glitch, you're next. Light up their networks." Patel cracked his knuckles dramatically. 6 million hours of zero-G cat videos incoming, plus some specialty content featuring cats knocking things off tables. Their pattern recognition is going to have a synthetic aneurysm. Lucky Chen paused. "Just try not to break causality this time." "No promises, sir. But I did label all my rubber chickens this time." The council chamber watched in horrified fascination as the human squad completed their preparations. Their methods defied every principle of modern warfare, yet there was something about their confidence that made several representatives nervous. Commander Kovacs, the Arxian representative, ventured, "Surely you don't expect these heroes," Kovacs supplied. "These irregulars to prevail against 15,000 state-of-the-art combat drones." Kovacs checked her neural feed again. The deployment countdown was nearly complete. "No, Ambassador. I expect them to do what humans do best, prove that impossible is just a word." On the Normandy, Chen gave the final order. "Murphy's Law Brigade, deployment in 30 seconds. Remember, they're expecting us to fight like machines. So we'll fight like humans instead," his team chorused back. "Atlas, mission parameters." The AI's voice carried a hint of resignation. "Survive. Succeed. Make tactical AIs question their existence." Perfect. Chen checked his weapon one last time. "Time to remind the galaxy why they called Earth a death world, not because of our technology." The drop pods launched, streaking toward the planet below. Inside each one, a human warrior grinned in anticipation. "But because of us." The council feed tracked their descent, and for a moment, even the Vulxian ambassador fell silent. There was something both primitive and profound about watching actual living beings drop into combat, something that had been lost in the age of drone warfare. They were about to remember why. The first sign that something was wrong with the drone army came when their perfectly coordinated sensor grid reported detecting a human soldier in 37 places simultaneously. The second sign was that all of these detections appeared to be carrying rubber chickens. Tactical analysis has crashed, Atlas reported with what sounded suspiciously like glee. They're attempting to calculate the statistical probability of your current strategy. Good luck with that, Chen muttered, ducking behind a fallen column as drone fire sprayed overhead. Ghost, status. Zhou's voice came through with the peculiar echo of someone who technically wasn't supposed to exist according to every sensor in the area. Their formation is beautiful, sir. Perfectly spaced, perfectly coordinated, and completely blind to anyone crazy enough to belly crawl through a sewage pipe. How many have you tagged? 17. Their friend or foe systems are having a wonderful time trying to figure out why their own units are apparently attacking them. Turns out they never programmed them to check for humans literally climbing on top of them and sticking override chips on their heads. Across the battlefield, Lieutenant Patel's voice carried the strain of someone trying not to laugh while hacking. Sir, you're going to want to see this. The cat videos are working better than expected. Chen risked a peek around his cover. A squad of Mark V drones had frozen in place, their advanced tactical processors completely occupied with analyzing a video of a cat in zero gravity playing with a laser pointer. They can't ignore them, Patel explained gleefully. Their threat assessment protocols require them to analyze any unknown pattern for potential hostile intent. And since cats defy the laws of physics anyway. Save the scientific explanation, Chen interrupted, readying his kinetic hammer. How many can you lock up? About a third of their force is currently trying to determine if knocking things off tables constitutes a valid military strategy. The council feed was chaos. Species that had relied on drone warfare for generations watched in horror as their perfect tactical systems were undone by what several representatives described as absolute nonsense. Are they? The Palaxian representative squinted at the feed. Are they using actual projectile weapons? Shotguns, Commander Kovacs confirmed. Turns out drone armor has a fascinating weakness to old-fashioned buckshot. Something about the spread pattern confusing their point defense systems. O'Neill's voice crackled over the comm, punctuated by the boom of his shotgun. Like my grandpappy always said, ain't no robot ever been programmed to expect a face full of lead shot and glitter. The battlefield had devolved into what drone tactical software classified as impossible scenarios. Zhou's mud-covered form flitted between their perfect formations, manually reprogramming units faster than their network could purge the corrupted code. Patel's cat videos had evolved to include something he called keyboard cat, which had caused 3 drone squadrons to initiate emergency reboots. Chen charged forward, kinetic hammer humming with power. The drones tracked him perfectly, their targeting systems predicting his movement with mechanical precision, which was exactly the problem. You know what machines never understand, he asked over the general comm as he sprinted straight toward the nearest drone cluster. Humans don't always take the tactically optimal path. He jumped, not toward cover or a strategic position, but directly into the middle of the drone formation. Their programming required 0.3 seconds to recalculate this apparently suicidal move. Chen only needed 0.2. The kinetic hammer came down with the full force of human ingenuity and spite behind it. The resulting electromagnetic pulse wasn't powerful enough to disable the drones permanently, but it did force their systems to reboot. In that brief window, Zhou's reprogrammed units opened fire on their confused comrades. Sir Atlas reported, their tactical AI is attempting to file a formal protest. It claims your current actions are unfair and illogical. Tell it to take a number, Chen grunted, already moving toward his next target. Ghost. How's that override cascade coming? 57 drones now think they're part of a synchronized dancing team, Zhou reported. You should see this, sir. They're attempting to recreate something called Gangnam Style. The Vulxian ambassador's crystalline form was vibrating at frequencies that threatened to shatter the council chamber's windows. This is not combat. This is chaos. Exactly, Kovacs smiled. Pure human chaos. The one thing you can't program a response for. O'Neill's voice cut through the tactical chatter. Incoming. Big ones. And you're not going to believe what I'm about to try. The feed showed a squadron of heavy assault drones converging on his position, their weapon systems charged and ready. By all tactical predictions, the human soldier was about to become a cautionary tale about organic warfare. Instead, O'Neill pulled out what appeared to be a child's toy and threw it at the lead drone. The resulting explosion of glitter, chaff, and what several observers swore were rubber ducks completely overwhelmed their sensor suites. Their targeting systems are designed to track threats, Patel explained between bursts of hacking. They literally cannot compute the tactical value of a rubber duck moving at ballistic velocities. Chen used the confusion to close in on the drone command node. Around him, the perfect machine army was falling apart in ways that would give tactical programmers nightmares for generations. Some units were still trying to process cat videos. Others had been convinced they were actually kitchen appliances. A particularly unfortunate squadron was executing a flawless robot dance routine under Zhou's guidance. Status report, he called out, bringing his hammer down on another drone that had frozen trying to calculate the probability of a human actually attacking it with a melee weapon in an age of energy weapons. 70% of their force is compromised, Atlas reported. The remainder are attempting to generate new tactical protocols on the fly, but they keep encountering fatal errors labeled humans make no sense. Sir Patel's voice carried the tone of someone who had just discovered something wonderful. Their main tactical network just tried to divide by zero, trying to understand why Lucky's rubber chicken strategy worked. The battle, if it could still be called that, was reaching its crescendo. What had started as a perfect display of drone warfare had devolved into something that would require entirely new categories in military historiography. And through it all, Murphy's Law Brigade advanced, proving with each impossible action why humans had never fully embraced robotic warfare. Not because they couldn't build better machines, but because sometimes the best weapon was a soldier who could look at a perfect tactical situation and decide to do something completely insane instead. The Vulxian command center was a testament to automated warfare. A perfect hexagonal structure surrounded by layered defensive protocols and the remnants of what had been their elite guard drones. Now those same elite units were either executing elaborate dance routines or trying to process whether a cat video constituted a legitimate security threat. Final defense line, Chen announced, studying the structure through his tactical display. Atlas, what are we looking at? Their most advanced defensive protocol, sir. The command AI has full control of all remaining functional units and has likely calculated every possible approach vector we might use. Chen grinned. Did it calculate this one? Murphy's Law Brigade, Operation Stupidity Gambit is go. The council feed showed what happened next in perfect clarity, causing several representatives to require immediate medical attention. Lieutenant Patel's fingers flew across his makeshift console. Uploading now, sir. Every cat video ever made, plus some choice clips of humans doing increasingly improbable parkour stunts. Their threat assessment is going to love this. The command center's outer defenses began to twitch as their pattern recognition software tried to determine if a human could actually successfully backflip off a moving train while drinking coffee. Ghost, you're up. Zhou's mud-covered form emerged from what security scans insisted was solid wall. Sir, remember those override chips we've been planting? Turns out if you cross-wire them just right, she pressed a button on her jury-rigged controller. Every compromised drone in the area suddenly began broadcasting different pop songs at maximum volume. The command AI's attempts to filter the sensory input caused 3 subsystems to crash simultaneously. Lucky. O'Neill stepped forward, holding what appeared to be his last rubber chicken. I modified this one special, sir. Ghost's music gave me an idea. Turns out if you modulate the squeak just right, it hits the exact resonance frequency of their quantum processors. The Vulxian ambassador's voice rose to frequencies only dogs could hear. This is impossible. Our command systems are hardened against every known form of attack. Known being the operative word, Kovacs replied calmly. Chen raised his kinetic hammer as his team moved into their final positions. You know what the real difference is between humans and machines, he asked over the open channel, knowing the command AI was listening. Machines learn from success. Humans? We learn from failure. We learn from every stupid mistake, every crazy attempt, every time someone said that's impossible, and we did it anyway. The command AI's response came through all channels. Tactical analysis indicates your current strategy has a 0.0% chance of success. Chen's laugh carried across the battlefield. Watch this. What happened next would be debated in military academies for generations. It involved one kinetic hammer, 3 rubber chickens, approximately 6,000 synchronized dancing drones, and what O'Neill would later swear was the perfect timing of a cat video showing a kitten supremely failing to jump onto a counter. The command center's defenses, programmed to respond to every logical attack vector, had no protocols for dealing with what the after-action report would diplomatically call weaponized absurdity. 1 week later, the Galactic Council chamber was unusually subdued. Ambassador Zixnax's bioluminescent patterns had been stuck in a muted gray of embarrassment for days. So Commander Kovacs addressed the assembly about those criminally primitive human combat tactics. The data has been reviewed. Zixnax managed, their translator struggling to convey the proper level of chagrin. We found 67,000 tactical violations, 43 impossible maneuvers, and 1 instance of what can only be described as death by synchronized dance routine. Don't forget the cat videos, Kovacs added helpfully. The Vulxian ambassador, their crystalline form still showing stress fractures from the battle footage, spoke up. We have formally withdrawn our complaint about the colony incident, and we would be interested in discussing joint training exercises. With our drone forces, of course, Zixnax asked hopefully. Actually, the Vulxians' facets flickered nervously with your organic troops. Our tactical analysis suggests that achieving unpredictability might be valuable. Commander Kovacs smiled as she stood to leave. Just remember, next time you see humans doing something that seems completely illogical in combat, ask yourself, are we really being primitive? She paused at the door. Or are we just the only ones crazy enough to think outside your perfectly programmed box? Behind her, the council erupted into chaos as several species simultaneously requested information about rubber chicken procurement protocols.